people should know that animal-assisted interventions are really a broad term. So there are therapists out there who are partnering with cats and miniature horses and full-size horses and rabbits and guinea pigs, and I'm probably leaving some out. There's also some residential facilities out there that incorporate farm animal care into their treatment goals. So if you're not a dog person, that doesn't mean that this isn't for you. You'll just have to kind of adjust what I'm saying to think about how that would work with the particular species you're working with.
Hey there, and welcome to the Speechy Side Up podcast. My name is Vanita Litvack, and I am so grateful you're here. I'm an ASHA certified speech language pathologist, author, and augmentative and alternative communication consultant who is obsessed with helping SLPs like you stop reinventing the wheel and connect with other SLPs in the trenches. Have you ever wondered how other SLPs seem to be doing it all with ease? Well, around here, you'll get to hear firsthand how SLPs are really getting things done while keeping evidence-based practice and self-care in mind. Think of this as a coffee date with your SLP friends. Get ready to be challenged and encouraged while we learn together. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Sharlet Jensen, author of Paws for Progress, and integrating animal-assisted interventions into your speech language pathology practice. She's also the owner of Speech Dogs, a business dedicated to helping SLPs incorporate therapy dogs into their practice. Sharlet, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So does that cover everything, or is there anything else you'd like to add before we discuss integrating animal-assisted interventions into your speech language pathology practice?
Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking specifically about therapy dogs because that's where my experience is. But people should know that animal-assisted interventions are really a broad term. So there are therapists out there who are partnering with cats and miniature horses and full-size horses and rabbits and guinea pigs, and I'm probably leaving some out. There's also some residential facilities out there that incorporate farm animal care into their treatment goals. So if you're not a dog person, that doesn't mean that this isn't for you. You'll just have to kind of adjust what I'm saying to think about how that would work with the particular species you're working with. And also I work with kids, but again, this is not a specific age range that this type of intervention can be beneficial for. There's definitely people out there working with adults and incorporating a therapy animal as well.
That's awesome. I really love that. So why did you decide to start incorporating therapy dogs into your practice?
Yeah, it's something I'd always wanted to do. Even back in grad school, I had a new puppy that I brought into our adult rehab group with permission from my professor who was overseeing that group, just as a one-time thing. And it just brought up so much spontaneous communication and even the caregivers where, everybody wanted to be a part of that group for that day that he was there. And then worked with an occupational therapist who had a therapy animal that they brought in on occasion. And it was always in the back of my mind, but I always got that messaging that it's not for speech therapists. That's an OT thing or that's a mental health counselor thing. And then also, another challenge until I started my private practice was always working in a very small space, working in schools and clinics. I had, a tiny little office where it really wouldn't have been feasible. But then I started my private practice, and a few years into that, I had a client with some very challenging behaviors, really fit that profile of pervasive drive for autonomy. Um, and I had worked with him for about 6 months and just had not developed rapport with him. We still struggled every day. He loved telling me how stupid I was, how stupid speech therapy was. He didn't want to be there. And really, his delays were really pretty mild in terms of the communication thing. So it was like, God, if we could just get to work, that could, we could, knock this out of the ballpark and this would be one less thing to worry about. But I knew he loved dogs. He had 2 dogs of his own at home. And that was one thing that we could talk about that didn't cause us a lot of stress. And so I decided to bring my new dog, Delta. Well, not new. I'd had her about 9 months at that point and had been going through socialization and training. And so I arranged with his mom. He knew in advance that she was coming. We talked about it. And that day coming through the door, he had this big smile on his face. I had literally never seen this child smile before, just chatting up a storm. We didn't really directly target goals on that day. It was more just building that connection between him and I by directing our attention to the dog. My focus wasn't on him. His focus wasn't on me. We were able to have this neutral third party in the room that made both of us happy, made both of us calm. And so from then on, I was like, I'm hooked. Like, definitely for this kid. I can think of other kids that this would work really well with as well. and just gradually started integrating her more and more often and started coming up with new ideas to incorporate her for a wider variety of goals and with different kids. And then COVID hit just a few months later. And so suddenly I had a very small caseload that I was seeing in person, had more opportunities to bring her with me the whole time I was in the office. I had a second dog as well that I started bringing with me. And it just kind of exploded from there. At this point, it would be really hard for me to envision my work without incorporating the dogs because I find them so helpful with so many clients for so many different purposes.
That's so cool. So what do you do with, like, allergies in that
Yeah,
case?
so far I've had a couple of kids that their parents expressed concern about allergies. I always check when I'm doing an initial referral or initial intake for allergies, if there's any fears, if there's anybody at home that's immunocompromised. The couple of kids that have had allergies have actually had their own pets anyways at home, so parents are like, "We'll just give them some extra allergy medication." I always check to make sure that that's something that they're comfortable with, they volunteer that. I also wanna make sure that the kid's not gonna be so groggy that coming to therapy is, gonna be pointless. But in those 2 cases, the parents have been fine with it, and it's ended up working really well. Obviously, if there was a child that had severe allergies, I would have to refer them to another provider. It just wouldn't be feasible to keep
Yeah,
the office clean enough. I do have, like, an inner office. If there are fears or something comes up unexpectedly in a session, my dog can stay in that inner office. She's got a bed and snacks and things like that in there. So that happens rarely, but occasionally I do need to separate her from the client for usually for her welfare more so than for the client.
got it. What do your sessions look like? Is it, like, incorporating your dog every session, or is there a point where the kids kind of get so used to the dog that you're doing, like, traditional speech therapy? What does that look like?
Yeah. So often, kind of a typical session is, the dog will help me transition the child in. So if it's a child that's at all resistant, they can do something for the dog, like let's go fill the dog's water bowl. Let's show the dog how we wash our hands or show the dog where we, hang up our coats just to get them transitioned in. And then often she'll just sit. I have two that I'm partnering with right now, Delta and Sky. And so both female. So I'll just say she for the most part. But most of the time, she'll be sitting on, her bed, or she might choose to sit next to us while we're working, doing pretty traditional looking things. I do a lot of, picture words and that kind of structured games and cards and things like that. But then we can apply it meaningfully to the dog. So if we're working on S clusters, for example, we might practice some kind of traditional drills at the table. And then it's like, let's go ask Delta to spin and she can step up on things and all those things where we can focus on the S sound. And then also at the end of the session, then they can show that to their caregiver, whoever brought them. So they're teaching, quote unquote, teaching the caregiver how to make the dog do something, but they're getting in that extra repetition of whatever skill we've been targeting and also getting a little bit of that generalization by using it with somebody who's maybe not prompting them in the exact same way that I am. But then I do have sessions too where, it's not the kids aren't as reliant on having the dog there. And so my dog gets to sleep. That's a really important part of animal assisted therapy is giving that dog lots of downtime because there are times where it's really stressful for them. If you have a child that is dysregulated and upset, the dogs definitely feed off of that. And so they need those kids that are more willing to just sit and do their work without having them right there by their side to have those downtimes throughout the day.
Gotcha. So what benefits have you seen from using this type of therapy?
Yeah. So I started out just for that rapport building piece. That was what I had in the forefront of my mind. But I found so much with sensory regulation. My dogs are trained to provide deep pressure input. So they'll lie. Typically, I have the child lie on their stomach and the dog lies on their back or on their legs. I found if I have the kids sitting up and the dog's lying on their legs, they tend to want to kind of lean over the dog and restrain the dog, and they don't like that so much. So we do a lot of deep pressure input. The dogs, one of my dogs, Delta, will actually get up on the swing with the kids. And as long as I'm really controlling it so it doesn't get wild, she'll swing with the kids and they'll often lean back against her as they're swinging. So they're getting that pressure, the warmth of her body in addition to the movement. So that's always really fun. And then a lot of times just, having her sitting there, she'll spontaneously put her head on their lap or a paw on their leg. And just that connection with another living being that, maybe I can't do as a human, but she can do that and have that interaction. And then just the motivation piece too. So for some of my kids who are maybe a little more resistant to like drilling for articulation, we can practice it and then, it's like, let's do it quietly. And then we'll go show it to Delta or go show it to Sky. what you can do. And so we get those extra repetitions and they're not doing it for me. There isn't that power struggle of I'm asking you to do this. Let's do it for the dog. And it becomes this kind of co-conspiracy where we're teaming up to do something with the dog. And the same with games too. Often we'll play either against the dog or they'll want the dog on their team. And obviously the dog's just lying there, but the kids don't care. Even my older kids who are like 8 or 9 years old and don't have any cognitive differences, they still totally buy into that the dog is on their side or that they're working to defeat the dog. And then for myself, it's made such a huge difference. I was definitely at a point prior to this where I was feeling really kind of burned out. Like I loved the kids, I loved what I did, but I had some of those kids, like that initial client that I brought Delta to meet, that just wear on you when you can't make progress and you feel like you're doing everything you can and taking that extra continuing education and spending the extra time outside of sessions thinking about what you can do differently and it's just not working. Being able to have success with those challenging kids has made a big difference to me in just how I feel about myself professionally, but also during the day. If I'm stressed or having a moment, I can take the dog for a quick walk. I can, just sit and pet the dog. All that just helps calm me and makes me more mindful and present as a clinician also.
I love that. What challenges have you faced with animal assisted interventions?
Yeah. So again, I work with kids. So that's a population that can have some definite difficulties with impulse control. There can be times where they're dysregulated. So it takes a lot of vigilance on my part. This is definitely something that I feel would be very difficult to do if you were like just out of grad school and just learning the speech therapy side of things. You definitely have to have that kind of automatic ability to control the situation with your client before you can add an animal in as well. But so, yeah, so making sure that I'm just constantly on top of making sure the dog's welfare is taken care of because if they're calm and relaxed, they're going to be safer. If they're stressed, obviously that's when you need to be concerned about dangerous interaction, which is a very real possibility and something that we have to always keep in the back of our mind. And that said, liability insurance has been challenging. I always got a very vague answer from my professional insurance as to whether or not it would be covered. But just recently, that's starting to change. There's a new program through AAIP, which is the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals. They just launched a pilot program to get your animal evaluated by a third party. So in my case, I hired a local dog trainer to come in and go through the assessment with me. Um, and then that opens me up once I passed that, which fortunately I did with both of my dogs just recently here. It makes me eligible for a special policy that's just for animal assisted interventionists. And it covers um, not only if something happens to the client, but also if the dog gets injured, veterinary costs and things like that. So that is going to make a huge difference in the possibility for many people to be able to incorporate therapy animals, just having that solid liability insurance, that question taken off the table. And then another challenge has just kind of been mindset. Again, I kind of heard early on over and over that this isn't a speech therapy thing. This is for other fields. And there really, when I started, was not much information, which is why I'm so passionate about getting the information out there. This is something that's possible for speech therapists. I think we're actually a really good fit as a field because we're really in tune with, looking at a situation and breaking it down into very teachable steps. And so we can do that with the animals, we can do that with the clients, we can do that with how the clients and animals interact for things. And I think we just tend to be very creative anyways. And so it's fun to come up with kind of new ways to integrate the animals into therapy that maybe nobody else is doing. But yeah, definitely that mindset and just lack of representation in the area.
Oh, wow. It's like something you wouldn't even consider, some of those things that you
Right.
have to deal with. So, how can SLPs find more about partnering with a therapy dog?
Yeah, so there's getting to be more and more information available out there. I actually just recently had a book that was published by ASHA called Paws for Progress. So that's available and it's very how to. That was one of my frustrations early on was everything I was finding. First of all, it was aimed at other fields, but it tended to be very theoretical, like information about the human animal bond and how animals help reduce our stress and things like that, which is good to know, but it didn't give me an idea of like, okay, when I bring my dog to work, what is this going to look like? What is she going to be doing? What is she not going to be doing? So I try to have that very clearly spelled out based on my experience and my research. And then my website as well. I have a lot of video clips on there. So again, if people are just curious what this looks like, I've had really supportive families who have given me permission to videotape their kids and photograph their kids and use that for the purpose of promoting therapy animal inclusion because those parents have seen the difference it's made with their kids. Some of my parents have gone through other therapists in the past and then have ended up on my caseload and just seen the difference that having the dogs there makes with their particular child. And then again, that triple AIP, the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals, it's only a couple of years old, but they're putting out some really great educational options. Having that liability insurance option through their evaluation is really helpful. And they're doing like monthly webinars. They're just putting out more and more information and getting more people involved all the time. So that's been a big resource for me here recently.
Great. What kind of dogs do you have and where do people get therapy dogs?
Yeah. So I got really lucky with Delta. She was a rescue when I adopted her. She was a young adult. She's a Great Dane Labrador Retriever mix. We didn't know that at the time. We've since DNA tested her and found out that's what she is. And she actually had a lot of fears and phobias. She had had quite a traumatic past from what we can tell. And so it took a long time and a lot of effort taking her out in public to get her to where she felt comfortable. But fortunately, she always felt really comfortable around kids and in my office. So part of it I got really lucky with her. And then my other dogs have been dogs that I got from a breeder as a puppy, and they were Brittany Spaniels. So I had Johnny Utah, who I partnered with for several years. He retired and he's actually since passed away, but he was just a fantastic fit and very high energy, which again is not something that you see represented. But the kids, they have to have some basic boundaries and some basic manners. But the kids loved when he'd get to running around and doing his tricks. And some kids really attached to that high energy that he brought, as opposed to Delta tends to be fairly calm and slow moving, and which can be very calming for other kids. And then I had Bodhi, who was a Catahoula. He worked for about a year as a young adult, and then he just was showing some signs that it wasn't something he loved. He was getting more and more uncomfortable with strangers that were coming into the office. So I retired him from that work. And I'm currently working with Sky, who's actually my mom's dog. My mom lives next door to us, so I get to see Sky on a regular basis and have a quite a bond with her anyways. But she's another little, very wiggly Brittany Spaniel. She's still young. There's times we're definitely still working on some impulse control and boundaries with her. But really, rescues can have great dogs. I would definitely recommend really, if this is something that you're thinking of and you're looking at rescuing a dog, making it very clear to the rescue organization what you're looking for, because temperament is everything. And again, there's no one right temperament or one right breed for this work, but that affiliative nature, wanting to be near humans, wanting to connect with people is really important. And then having a dog that's not going to necessarily stand its ground if it's threatened, if it gets backed into a corner or things like that. Again, I'm always taking every precaution possible to make sure that the dog's comfortable and the kid's approaching the dog and handling the dog in a way that it wants to be handled. But the reality is that we have impulsive kids and they do impulsive things sometimes. So having a dog that's going to do everything to get out of a situation rather than react with a bite or a bark or a scratch is another, just piece of that dog's inherent temperament that some dogs are born with and some dogs aren't.
Great tips. Do you use this as a marketing strategy for your business? Like, are you known as a business that offers this in your area?
Yeah, so I have gotten a couple of calls where they've asked like, "Oh, are you the dog lady?" So word is getting out. I actually have been very lucky. I work in an area where we're super short on therapists, so I've never I have a website, but I've never had to actively market. I do have pictures of me working with the dogs, and I definitely mentioned the animal assisted intervention on there, just so that families that call, like if they were to have a child that was fearful or allergies, they would just know like, okay, I need to look elsewhere as kind of a first step in that intake. But I definitely think it could be a huge value add to any business. I brought my dogs. I did the Apraxia walk the last couple of years, and 2 years ago I brought Delta, and this year I brought Sky. It definitely gets a lot of interaction with the public. They have their therapy dog vest or bandana on, and everybody has lots of questions and thinks it's really cool. So it definitely could be something that you use to market your business.
That's really cool. This is great. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I don't think we've had anybody come and talk about this. So
Yeah.
you're definitely a pioneer in this area. If people are interested in learning more, where can they find and connect with you?
Yeah, so I have the Speech Dogs website. It's just www.speechdogs.com. If you're interested in kind of getting started, I do have a free resource on there. It's a roadmap to partnering with your speech therapy dog. And it's kind of broad. So even if you're not a speech therapist, if you're a related field, most of it would apply to you there as well. I do have a course that I'm working on coming up. I'm hoping to have that out a little bit later this winter. And then you can always email me at charlotte@speechdogs.com, and it's SHARLET @speechdogs.com.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been so informative, and I'm sure you're going to have people reaching out with questions.
Yeah, that would be great. I love it. This has become such a just a labor of love for me. It started out as something I was doing for myself personally, and then I've seen such benefit. And just getting to talk with other speech therapists who are interested and encouraging them has just really kept me going in this.
That's amazing. Well, I can't wait to follow along on your journey, and thank you again for coming on.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening. By the way, have you joined the SSU crew yet? By joining, you get access to the free goods section on our website, plus podcast updates, special event notifications, and therapy inspiration. You can sign up at bit.ly/join SSU crew, all lowercase, or just find the link in this episode description. Also, don't forget to take a screenshot of this episode so that you can always refer back to it and share it on social media if you really love the topic. Take care and remember to always fill your speechy side cup first before you can pour into others.